Hey everybody, so we are going to be doing our collage design painting, and basically this is kind of one of our culminating activities for the semester, and it's taking you to the part of the semester where we're really starting to work a lot more creatively on things that have more personal meaning for you. So we started out with the glaze painting, which is much more classical in nature and it's based on a still life. Then we went to the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist project where we were learning more about technique, not so much about subject matter. On this one, you could use some of that technique if you like, but we're really focusing more on subject matter and design and personalizing what we're doing. So we're going to kind of look at a little bit at the surrealistic movement and just briefly look at some of the paintings by Magritte and by Dali, which have a big influence on this project because of the way that the surrealists use subconscious elements, intuitive elements, and then they also really distorted the space or created unrealistic like proportions or relationships between objects. Other things to kind of look for is that there were a lot of created elements to connect things. The personal aspect of the design, so that kind of goes back to intuitive or subconscious. That's something to kind of keep in mind as you're going through and looking at the images. And you still want to consider compositional balance or imbalance, harmony within the painting, and keeping a good composition. So don't just let everything become a big mess in there. You really want to keep in mind some of the ideas of design that we've talked about. As we look at through some of these images, we've got a lot of Dali images followed by Magritte images, and you can kind of see what I mean about the interspersing of like different elements. The space becomes really distorted within these. They definitely have some sort of like personal meaning behind them. We're not always sure what that personal meaning is. I mean, really, a lot of the surrealistic paintings were based a little bit more on like dream elements and so on by those artists. And we're going to try and infuse a little bit more kind of purposeful design behind our meaning and so on. But this one is pretty timely with the toilet paper roll there in the middle. Anyways, but you can kind of see how the compositional aspects of what's going on. It still should have like a focus of what you're looking at. The way that things lead into each other becomes really important. This is kind of what I mean about like things that just become made up to create more interest in the space or to connect things together a little bit more directly. So everything isn't necessarily based on something that you've got realistic reference for, although you probably have realistic reference for a lot of the things, but you're going to have to make some of the elements up. These are all Dali images right here, and so you can kind of understand what I mean about like that created element in space. There's a better image of that painting. I need to delete the other slide. This right here actually belongs more at the end if I remember correctly, because I have some things in here. This is kind of based a little bit more on Magritte's images. And this is a Magritte image right here. There are a lot of like skies and so on, these fluffy clouds that he puts in there. But he intersperses these elements together in ways that are a little bit different and probably a little closer to what we're going to do with the project. You can see how he takes like realistic things and then morphs them into other objects, and how he creates like these spaces that become quite different from what we expect of the natural elements that he's included in there. And the other one to reference with that idea is the one with the elephants with the big sousaphones or whatever that were coming off of them. When you look at these last images, these are actually images that are more contemporary, that are based on Magritte or Dali. And so this is a theater set that's kind of based on that Magritte style. This is based on Magritte right here, a photo. These artists were really influential to later times. These are basically advertising images for a watch company. They had a whole series of them that were all based on Magritte. And this right here was for Volkswagen. You can see the little Volkswagen logo down there, but definitely based on that kind of style that Magritte would use. This is actually the museum in Brussels, if I remember correctly. It's the Magritte Museum, and so this is a mural on the outside that kind of references back to his work. So really kind of interesting in a lot of respects. Now we're going to look at some contemporary artists that use similar kind of surrealistic styles. Some of them are like composited together as paintings. Some are composited together as actual photographs. So just kind of understand these are kind of a variety of different methods and medias that are used to create these, but creating new spaces with elements that you don't necessarily expect to be in those spaces together. Some of these artists reference a lot of like older paintings. This is based on a Vermeer, but with this big caterpillar in the middle, they've changed some of the background of the Vermeer. So just some different ideas for how you might look at putting these things together, and I just wanted to give you some inspiration. This is kind of based on a really famous portrait of Salvador Dali that people reference back to a lot. So just really interesting with the way things that are put together here, and definitely take this idea of like more contemporary design and refashion it. Excuse me. Some of these are kind of dark and scary, and others are a little bit more fun. You're welcome to kind of go whatever direction you would like with this. This is more of a photo montage or whatever compilation. This is a painting by David interspersed with other elements. So just some interesting ways of kind of looking at how you want to use the space, how you want to redefine it and intersperse things together. Contemporary artists does mainly paintings with some collage elements added into them. These are mostly collage elements where they've actually taken like photos and repurposed them together into new pieces. How you put together your design for this project to work from is really up to you. If you're very familiar with the computer, you're welcome to use things like Photoshop. Right now, with everything going on, Adobe is offering student licenses for free. So you very easily could do that, but if you're not familiar with that, I would recommend maybe trying out just doing cutouts or looking for images online and then reprinting them in different sizes, because you do want to be able to play with the sizes on these. You can see these final images, the artist actually uses like staples sometimes to put things together, and the staples add another element to the final image that they've created. Here's some of the same artists with lots of staples, the torn edges. Sometimes in some of these projects, you might put together the whole image along these lines, and then you might actually paint the whole image exactly as you see it with the torn edges, even the staples and so on in it. That's up to you. Or you could put it in a little bit more cleanly like some of those other ones that we saw. But these are just kind of different compilations. Interesting ways of kind of looking at it. This is a painting that's done on top of the music, different elements put together. Maybe not so much referencing the design idea that we're doing, but the reason I included this in here is because I wanted you to understand that you don't have to just work on a typical canvas. If you have something like maybe you want to create this out of the middle of a book or something, and you want to spread open the book, separate the pages, and kind of glue it open so it'll stay open, and then create your painting on the book itself. So you can use different elements as you create this painting. These three were all done by the same artist. This one is a different artist. This one's a different artist as well. And she did this one as well. So lots of different ways of looking at this and interpreting the project and what you want to do with it. I really want you guys to kind of put a personal element into this, and it might be with the way you design the theme, it might be the methods that you use to create the final image. So project requirements, any size is okay. If you work too small, you're going to have a really hard time getting details in there, and that's going to take away from the final piece. If you make it really big, it's going to be difficult for you to get it done. On the other hand, I don't want you all working on like a 16 by 20 inch canvas. I really want you to consider like what kind of impact you want with the painting and how it should finally look at the end. Any subject matter is acceptable as far as I'm concerned. I would, one of the things I said in the assignment was think about current events. There's a lot going on right now. Why we're doing this digitally. So you might think about doing a project that's like about your personal viewpoint on like the isolation of what's happening or your fears about what's happening or whatever it is. I want you to really consider themes, whatever they are, whether it's about current events or whether it's something else, that have some sort of a connection for you that's personal or emotional. And the reason I want you to do that is because you're going to be a lot more drawn to intuitive and subconscious elements if you do that. There will be aspects of it that you feel more connected to and more able to express yourself, probably. You can work in any media, including actual collage, like those pieces that were put together with torn paper. Mixed media, you can collage elements back into an actual painting if you want to do that, or write or draw back into a painting. Oil paint, acrylic paint, and so on, any of those things. Alternative surfaces are fine for this. It doesn't have to be on a canvas. It can be on boards. It could be an object. You might think about how your surface influences our final interpretation of your theme. So that's why I said like maybe a book for some reason, or maybe you want to paint it on like a personal object that you have, a toy or something you have from your childhood. Just kind of depends on what you're trying to get across. And think about that even if you go to current events, like what object, or like I saw a piece that somebody had painted a whole painting on a mask. So think about things like that and how they influence what we're going to interpret. You want to try and have at least 4 or 5 elements incorporated and pay attention to the variation of size of those elements, because you really want to create a good composition and a sense of focus. I don't want you to just have, like, if you remember the composition lecture that I do in class, if all of your elements are about the same size within the painting, then it's that really monotone feeling and it doesn't give any emphasis to anything. So think about how you want to intersperse things, that you want something larger that's going to kind of pull things together. One of the things I said within the assignment explanation is really keep in mind subconscious items. Like maybe you're doing a piece about current events and for whatever reason there's something that you just keep feeling like you need to have in there even though you don't see a direct tie-in. Go with that. That's what the surrealist would tell you. Go with it. A lot of times those subconscious elements, even though they don't feel directly tied to what it is you're trying to express, there is a connection somewhere in there. And it's funny how much those elements are what really drive the interesting parts of the painting or the project that you're developing. I found that in my own experience, those are the things that people get drawn to, and they create their own meaning out of those objects, and it still reads for people, even though it might not be the same meaning you might find you have. So let's look at some previous student work. The way I've developed this project over the years is originally just started more as the collage design, and we've started discussing more and more some of the surrealism and so on in it. So you'll notice that some of these are a little bit more decorative in a lot of respects, and others start to seem like they have other meanings going on in them. Some of these are really well designed and really well executed at the end, and others feel a little bit kind of fuzzy and not so finished. I think this one, these were really nicely designed as well executed. This one was great. It just feels a little bit like the theme to it doesn't feel to have as much depth as I would have liked. This one was a really large piece that included some collaged elements you can kind of see from the light reflecting off, but there was paper underneath here. These were actual news pieces that the artist had saved from 9/11, so that's how they ended up there. This one, the finished piece had small canvases that were hanging off these, but I don't have any images of it when it was completely done. This is an actual branch that the person had put, and we'd attached it to the wood panel that they used for the overall painting. So you can kind of see from looking at these, others are just really self-explanatory, and then some seem to have more personal meaning or description having in them. And it's okay if you don't understand everything that's happening in the painting. What I really want you guys to think more about is like how you're going to put these elements together and what your final like really being able to express yourself personally as an artist and being able to express what you want to say. And don't feel like they have to be dark to do that. They might be really kind of uplifting images or have some other thing to them that are really positive, and that would be wonderful either way.